All right, Ben, we're rolling.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate you guys doing this very much.
Sure.
And we'll try to do it as quickly as we could. So if you would, just take a minute and introduce yourselves. And
Sure. Bo Caldwell, Superintendent, Henderson County Public Schools. Born and raised in Henderson County, and proud to serve as superintendent. I'm starting my 36th year in public education. Started as a teacher, assistant principal, central office worker, assistant superintendent, and now superintendent. And like I said, all my whole career has been with Henderson County, and it's just an honor and a pleasure to serve this great community of Henderson County.
John Bryant, Associate Superintendent, 21st year in education. Served as a high school English teacher for a number of years. Worked as a coach while I spent that time. Then elementary school principal, high school administrator, human resources director, and now currently starting my 4th year as the Associate Superintendent with the school system.
thank you.
Absolutely.
First topic, first question is going to be, why is leadership important? Why does leadership matter in education?
I think leadership matters, not just in education, but in everything, every organization. You need direction. You need goals. You need everyone working for the same thing. And I think that a good leader, that's what a good leader does. He pulls his people together, and where they start working together for one common goal. And I think that leadership matters. I think there's a hashtag that goes around that says leadership matters, and it matters in not just in public education. That, like I said, that leader has the support of the people, and they need someone that they know is looking out for their organization.
Right, and I think in so many ways leadership matters because it's impossible to hit a target that you can't see. And leaders help to identify what that target is, whether it be a short-term or a long-term target. You heard Mr. Caldwell speak to the idea of direction. And leadership is an opportunity to set direction for people, for a business, but for a school system, it's about outcomes for students. And clear vision, clear targets, clear direction is the leadership challenge and why it's so important in schools.
And leadership matters when there's a challenge. We sometimes talk about a great leader as a captain of a ship a lot of times. And leadership, sometimes it's not too tough when the seas are calm. But what happens when there's a storm? And what happens when the seas get rough? That's when people start looking at that leadership. And they start looking at the direction and the goals and the targets they need to have. And when times are tough, there needs to be someone there.
Thank you. Common topic now is the difference between leadership and management. Could you speak a little bit about how you perceive that?
Absolutely. We know in many respects, I think management is an initial step toward leadership. It's sort of understanding how the engine works. The leadership piece is knowing what to do to maximize the efficiency of that engine, to maximize what you might accomplish with that resource. And so when we think about management in school systems, we talk a lot about school level administrators or building level administrators, knowing how the school operates, knowing how to serve and support kids, thinking through the logistics of getting a student to school, getting them home, how classroom operations work. And so the management piece is just the moving pieces. The leadership piece is that big shift which says, okay, now we're going to set direction for ourselves. Now we're going to work toward greater effectiveness, greater student success or otherwise, and really saying, I understand the pieces so well that I can move beyond simply managing them. We have a colleague who loves to say it's moving from checkers to chess. And I think that's a great way of thinking about it. It goes from a very simple and direct game to a much more complex and thoughtful. It's 3 moves, it's 4 moves ahead. And so the leadership piece of management versus leadership is moving to the strategic part of serving schools and educational systems.
And so much of it, and I know that you hear so many people talk and speak of the difference and one versus the other, and sometimes I look at it, it's truly a blend as well, as Dr. Bryant talks about knowing the vision and going from chess to checkers, but you got to understand that checker game. You got to understand, basically, as I used to say, the details. So many times great leaders can think 3 steps ahead and think about how to move, but if you don't understand truly where you are and got you to where you are right now, how can you move further? And sometimes managers, good managers, they know their people, and sometimes they know what's behind that organization and what got them there. But like I said, leadership takes them forward. I think you can't take them forward, like I said, if you don't understand truly the details. I think sometimes it's a great blend. I've seen great leaders knowing education, knowing what they need to do. However, just what's happening around them. They don't know, understand, they're not taking care of the details. So unfortunately, they know how to get here, or they know where they want to go. But unfortunately, in today's, what's happening around them today is not happening. Mm-hmm. So therefore, I think it's truly it's almost a blend of the two. Mm-hmm. I don't think sometimes you need to say, you're a manager or you're a leader. I think there's qualities of both that when you put them together, I think it's truly when you become successful.
We're often reminded that in education, you want to set lofty goals for kids in terms of student success and learning and achievement, but if the bus route doesn't get them to school, it won't matter. And that is, that, as he's saying, that detail piece cannot be excluded for the more grand, achievements that you're hoping for. They do both have to coexist.
If the bus doesn't run, or you don't get them fed, or the heat and air conditioner's not working, then learning's not going to happen. So.
Maybe we just give me just one moment.
All right.
As I verify everything's happening here.
All right. Well, while you're back and forth, you'd mentioned great leaders. If you'd talk for a minute about some of the traits of a leader. Hang on just a second. But that's understood.
I think among the greatest traits of leaders that I've worked alongside are those who anticipate the unknown in ways that help others to be more thoughtful and critical in the decision making that we have. I can certainly speak to the gentleman to my right in this respect, but we talk a lot about big decisions or implementation of initiatives or activities. There's a splash and there's a ripple. A lot of people are really good at the splash. They know what the initial impacts are going to be or how to handle those first parts. The really great leaders that I've worked with and worked alongside see that ripple well beyond the initial. They see all the direct and indirect effects of what's taking place and even predict the unknown to a degree that sometimes can be amazing if it's something that you've not given consideration to. You often have to be around people who challenge you to think about all the things you've not thought about. We say in education, great success is, teaching kids what to do when they don't know what to do. And I think great leaders do exactly that. They really are pushing other people to think through what they don't know yet or what might happen based on a decision or an implementation of a particular thing. And I think that's one of the core attributes that you see in great leaders.
Great leaders teams relationships to the people that are around you in that organization. And I think the tree of relationships of so many things, of listening and all of those different branches of relationships. And I think the root of that tree is trust. I think you got to trust that leader, and I think that I think there's a feeling between everyone in that organization that I trust you and you trust me. And all of a sudden, like I said, when things go tough and there are issues to be, I trust that you're going to make the right decision for our organization. And I think that then strongly means the relationship part, that you've got to have a great relationship with the people that you work with, to me, to be a great leader. The second thing is I think a great leader can't worry about failure. So many times we beat ourselves up when things go wrong and we're afraid to make a decision. Is it going to be popular or unpopular? I think a great leader has to know what's best and what's best for his or her people. And so therefore, I remember if you go in that little room right there, you have pictures of all the superintendents, and you look at Mr. Glenn Marlowe, that was superintendent for over 20 years. 20 years. I mean, I'm going on 4. I'm thinking, how in the world did he do 20? and I had to ask him one time. I said, Mr. Marlowe, how do you become a great administrator? How do you become a great principal? At that time, I was going to become a principal. How do you become a great principal? He looked and smiled. He said, well, you just make good decisions. And I said, well, how do I learn how to make good decisions? He says, you make bad ones. And he said, just learn by your mistakes. Learn what happens and always be reflective every day. I've challenged our administrators today, be better tomorrow than you are today. And anything you do, in every decision that you make, go back and spend a little time and reflect. What can I do better? How did that work? How can we improve that? But all of that's not going to happen, in my opinion, is if you don't have relationships. If you don't have that bond, and you especially don't have the trust of the people that you're working with and you're working for, because great leaders serve others. It's not that I'm telling you always what to do, it's we're working together. And many times I'm going to work for you, even though I may be the boss, or even though I may be the top one on the chart. I'm going to serve you. And when I serve you, that bond, that relationship, and that trust gets greater and gets stronger.
I think the cornerstones of those effective relationships are just really strong communication skills, whether it be as the organizational leader or otherwise. But the key element, I think, that's often missed when we talk about the importance of communication and highly effective leaders is this idea of you have to know who your audience is. Communication is very different based on the relationship that you have with individuals. You know, many times communication is believed to be just what we're saying and how we're saying it, but not about who is doing the listening. Where are they in their understanding of what's taking place? Where are they in terms of their readiness for moving forward? I had a superintendent that once shared with me at a conference, he said, you know, the measure of a vision is whether or not people can see themselves in the picture, which is all about this idea of, are we communicating in a manner in which they can hear? And that works when, as Mr. Caldwell was saying, you have strong relationships and trust with the people that you're working alongside and those who you're serving. In order that you've given thought to that level of communication so that you know that you're not just sharing an idea or sharing words, but you're sharing a message in a way that can be heard and received by the people that you're working with.
And to add on is also listening, as I think when he talks about communication. And yes, spreading the word as far as communication, but it's so important to listen. Mm-hmm. Listen to every person in your organization. Whether it's your leadership cabinet, people who are working close to you, or whether you go to a school and you sit down, i.e. with a school custodian, a school nurse, cafeteria, sit and talk to them. I think is communication, listening, and I go right back to communication and listening deals with that relationship and that trust and that bond that leader has with his or her organization.
Okay. This next topic's come up a couple times, just if you'd expand on it a little bit. The importance of vision and innovation within the organization.
Vision, I think, is paramount to movement. You know, it's this idea of we all desire movement forward. And when I say forward, I don't mean just directionally, I mean in terms of being more effective than we were previously. And our message even this year at the school system, let's be better today than we were yesterday. You know, let's be better tomorrow. Let's be better tomorrow. And those are simple betters. But vision, again, is about having a clear picture, knowing what it is that a success looks like, what it feels like, what it sounds like, what that is going to be for people that work within the organization or those that you're serving. You know, success for a student is one thing, and so having a clear vision for student success, having a clear vision for teacher and staff success, having a clear vision for school system success. And so articulating that vision in such a way that people understand and embrace it, and also know how to challenge it, how to polish and refine that. And so if we all know what the statue is supposed to look like at the end, we know what our role can be in terms of contributing to what that final product will be. But it's a paramount characteristic, again. If you put everybody in a boat and you say grab an oar and row, and we need to know where we're going. You know, otherwise we're just rowing. And that it can be exhausting work. But it's different if we know that there is a destination, that we know that there is a place that we're seeking to arrive.
In education, we're trying to teach our children today for the job market, as we just passed out T-shirts for our kindergartners in 2032. What kind of jobs are going to be there in 2032? And it's so hard for us. But I think we're doing the best we can, and it's right now we're looking at technology. with computers in the classroom. And I had a grandmother call the other day, and she was upset about all the computers, and she felt like it was too much. And she said, you know, those classrooms are not like what they used to be. I said, I know, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. And of course, I think she was going on the other end. But they can't be. They can't be. We have to keep up, and we have to have a vision. We have to know what we're doing today will prepare our students for tomorrow. And if we just continue to do what we've always done, we're always going to get what we've always got. And we don't want a child to be prepared when they graduate for the year 2019. We want our children to be prepared, prices of the t-shirts for kindergartners, for 2032. So therefore, we have to have a vision. We have to anticipate what do we need to do to help our children be prepared for the future. And I think that's a great vision for us.
We had a principal not long ago who set the motto for his school that was about the day after. Because really, effective public education, K-12 public education, is readiness for the day after you graduate, not graduation. You know, it's long about the day you walked across the stage, the day you got your diploma, but really, that's not what it's about. Done well, it's you're ready for the day that we're done with you. And then you have the skills and the competence and the confidence to take on those careers that didn't exist when you started school, and a world that looks very different than the one when you were 5. You know, when we say 2032, as we've been giving out those shirts, it feels like a sci-fi movie. You know, 2032 feels forever away. And for those children and their families, it's a blink. And if done well and clearly articulated vision among the leadership, then students will be prepared for that day in which we tell them this paper or this ceremony represents your readiness to be an independent, you know, citizen of the world.
Mm-hmm. This will be off tape, but that's how I approached my first child. It was all about the delivery.
Yeah.
Boy, was I wrong.
It was getting to delivery, right? Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Are we okay?
Thanks, Preston.
The next topic is preparing the organization, developing the organization to move forward, as you say. Talk a little bit about organizational development.
Wow. Organizational development, once again, I wanted to start with the roots. Organizational development is that whole organization is not going to move if there's not relationships, there's not trust within that organization. It's easy when you have people who want to go, who want to move in all in one direction. It's easier to run together than try to pull one. So therefore, I think getting the organization to move is, once again, developing that strong bind, that strong bond. I think the second thing is to work with your organization to develop leaders within your organization. I think if you're just, in my opinion, if you're just top heavy and one person is making all the decisions and one person's just running the organization, I don't think you're going to go very far. I think you run a lot further when you're in a group. And I think if you have leaders all working, small pockets of leaders working together, helps move an organization.
Yeah, and additionally, I think there's a requirement for adaptability and flexibility, thoughtfulness around being nimble enough to move. You know, sometimes school systems can feel a little bit like, you know, large ocean tankers. You know, turning around or changing direction can be very difficult because it has so much weight moving so slowly in this one direction, especially public education. It can often look very much like it's looked for decades. And you know, preparing for a future and making an organization one that can be healthy in its future is recognizing that, you know, we can't always use the systems and structures and the organizational charts and expectations that have existed historically, that we have to challenge ourselves. You know, we talk about, there's a great analogy that our superintendent uses is, you know, why do we cut the ham off at both ends? And is that only because that's the way we've always done it? And we learn that maybe we've always done it that way because grandma did it that way because that's how big the pot was, you know, and now we have an ability to do things differently, and we should ask ourselves, should we? You know, is there a reason that we're doing it this way? Is there a reason we should do it differently? And then be courageous enough to choose that and to be okay with failure, you know, as long as it's failing forward. You know, always asking ourselves, like, were we taking a risk that was about getting it better, getting it right, something that would better serve kids or our community or our system, our staff, and recognizing that adaptability means stepping out. It generally means like I'm going to do something different because I think that there might be an opportunity for us to improve. And that's not a guarantee. And sometimes it means, no, we need to go back and cut that ham on both ends. We thought we should not do that. But really being courageous enough to change course when necessary so that we've got an opportunity to be positioned well, when that day comes.
And many times, if you keep the analogy of the ship in the sea and changing course, many times storms arise that you don't see storms coming. That sometimes that puts a stop to the movement or the organization, or many times they'll have to change. Many times they'll have to adapt, and I think so. A great leader's got to be flexible, and a great leader just better be patient. So many times we want to move forward, but it's slow, hard work. It's the grinding work, and it's just not going to just get there. And just speaking from the school system, I mean, our organization is going this way, and then unfortunately, from the Sandy Hooks to the Parkland, the school shootings and the school safety. I mean, that affects our organization. Things have come in that we've had to change, that we didn't anticipate, things that we had to do that we've never done before. Here we're talking about educating, and now we're spending a great deal of time on safety. So you've got to be able to be flexible, you've got to be patient. And once again, things are going to hit that organization that you didn't know that were coming, that you've got to make sure you take care of as well.
Excellent. We talked about organizational development. Let's talk a little bit about working within the organization, team building, the importance of team building. We touched on this a little bit when I first came in. Talk about that and how the role and importance of team building now in running the school system.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. The importance, I think, of team is this idea of everyone knowing a role, knowing what their opportunity to contribute is, and also feeling success because that role is clearly defined for them. When you, I think, have an effective team, you don't have people who are stepping into each other because they understand how to work in concert, and they also understand the ways in which they can support and serve each other. And so the team element is there might be a chance where somebody else is carrying the ball, but we all understand how we work alongside them so that they can be successful in that. And then we're prepared to receive that whenever it comes. And so team building is this idea of this synergy that happens when the group understands how we work together and how we support and serve each other. And that does take regular conversations. It takes dysfunction at times. It takes moments where we miss a beat and recognize, hey, we've got to do that differently, or maybe someone else has a skill set that would be better served in whatever that role is. I think one of the foundations of really effective teams, those that I've worked on and those that have been less successful, are when people have roles and responsibilities that match the skill sets and the competencies that they possess, regardless of title or job responsibility. But really pairing people with work that they both can be successful at, and also folks understand how they can serve and support them in that.
And I think for team development and for teams to work together and collaborate, I think a great leader works behind the scenes to celebrate their successes. I think teams have got to feel good about what they're doing, and I think we work hard as administrators and principals to celebrate our teachers, celebrate our students. You always like to hear what a great job you're doing, and we do it in different ways. We joke around. You can either feed them, or you can give them a partial day off, whatever you need to do to celebrate our successes. Because so many times I think that we get into leadership and we look at the negative. We look at what we didn't achieve. How did we miss it? How much did we miss the mark? When we need to truly celebrate the growth that we have done, celebrate our successes. And I think a great leader will continue to work with that organization to where that organization then starts, like I said, realizing where their goal is, how they're going to get there, but they feel good about doing it as well. So,
Shifting gears a little bit now, if we can talk about ethics and diversity, two separate, but we're going to put them in the same piece here.
go ahead.
Definitely. I think you have to put yourself into a position where you feel driven by work that fills you with some sense of I believe more than anything else, like some sense of contentedness because you believe it is the right work. And I think that there's a connection between ethics and opportunity for folks there, where you say to yourself, okay, am I doing work that's good in the world? Am I doing work that is meaningful? And am I doing it in the right way? Again, one of our colleagues likes to say, like, it's not about being right, it's about getting it right, and challenging each other to get it right each and every day, whether it be the small decision or the big decision. And so I think we have an ethical responsibility to be good stewards of the responsibility that's been bestowed upon us. And so in public education, the responsibility of a child's educational career is immense. You know, it's among the greatest experiences that they're going to have. Or, you know, we often spend more time with the students in our schools than they spend with their own families. And that is an ethical responsibility that we carry. And so the influence that we provide to them, whether it be in the classroom or through extracurricular experiences, or the decisions that we make about how we serve and support kids, I think really carries that role. And to recognize that every child, 13,500 in our school system, comes with a completely different background. No matter whether you live on the same street, or you grew up in the same neighborhood, or you were born in a different country, all of us possess diverse backgrounds, the influences that help shape who we are as human beings and citizens in this community. And it's about making sure that we recognize that individual diversity and support its flourishing. You know, recognizing that we have an opportunity as we share with our school principals and leaders, we control the weather. And so we can grow plants with the sun and the rain that we create in this environment, should we choose to do so. And I feel like there's a challenge and a charge in that, in terms of serving young people and making sure that they're successful and owning that responsibility, because being servants in public education says that you are willing to hold fast to that moral compass.
And I think Dr. Bryant challenges not just our leadership team, but also basically our whole staff. When you start looking at ethics, but what's your why? Why are you doing this? So know your why. Know exactly every day when you go to work, what is your why? Why am I doing this? And when you get to the root of why you go into that position every day, and you can answer it, then I think that you're going to be successful. And when you talk to our teachers and talk to our staff, is knowing the why is for us to work with all children every day, love them, be dedicated to them, give our very best. Then I think when you do that, you've got the why. Why do we come to work? And why do we do what we want to do? And I think just always, when we talk about it, we'll put in a new program. If we're going to change our targets, change our goals, change our direction, well, the first thing, what's our why? Why are we going to do that? What is our purpose? What is our goals? What do we get out of it? So I think if every organization needs to start and says, what is our why? What is our thinking on what we want to do, and what are we doing? Is it matching up with what is our why? You know, we can go to work every day and this is our why. This is why we do things. This is what we want to do. But what we're doing doesn't truly represent our why. Mm-hmm. So know exactly what you want to do.
Talk about the role and importance of communication when you have a system with such.
And give me just a moment, please, to get through one for the shot. My apologies.
Yep, no worries. No worries. You good?
One of my favorite quotations by John Dewey is, the greatest illusion in communication is that it's accomplished. And I think about that all the time whenever we're talking about communication in public education. It is, as Mr. Caldwell mentioned before, it is a joint effort of sharing information, receiving information, and listening, not waiting to speak, as so many of us do. You know, we're often processing something that we're hearing, but wanting to share something back. And listening is being patient with the information that's being shared and really taking the time to reflect on both what its intent is, and what the opportunity is to connect with that person on the other side, and also to make sure that there is a common ground for understanding. Frequently in education, whether we're serving students or talking to staff, there are going to be moments of disagreement, and disagreement's healthy. There's nothing wrong with that. Communication can involve disagreement and heated debate and shared passions, and yet what you want to find is understanding. I want to understand where you're coming from and why that is the perspective or the decision or the direction. And recognizing that that never comes with a period at the end of the sentence. There's always an ellipse. You know, every dialogue it's almost to be continued, to be continued, to be continued. And when that is both the foundation that communication is built on, and then the expectation is that there's always going to be a follow-up and a give and take and a revisit and a continued dialogue, then you've got this kind of healthy circle. And when we think of communication and the effectiveness in the school system or effectiveness with our parents and families, it's about continuing to make sure that the circle is moving.
And many times when we have an issue, many times when we have an upset parent on something that's gone wrong or gone bad, Dr. Bryant and I will talk, and of course one of us will look in the old classic line is what we have here is a failure to communicate. And many times it's the root of it. Many times the word didn't get back to that person. Many times how it was even read or how it was even spoken maybe was not the intent of what it is. So communication is so important. The failure not to communicate will take an organization down very, very quickly. Now, as a school system, I think we do a tremendous job in one-way communication. I think we're getting it out there. Social media in this day and time now of putting things on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. You know, we used to print things off and put it in the child's book bag. Well, now it's a lot more communication. Pushing things out. Any type of organization has got to push things out. A true organization, though, it's two ways, Dr. Bryant is speaking about. It's also the listening part as well. And so therefore, as a large organization, I think you've got to be careful. We're so intent on the push, but we've got to provide opportunity to get that communication to come our way as well and listen. And so, but like I said, most of the time, the issues that happen, it's unfortunately a failure to communicate.
And I think they're certainly in the modern world, it's also an intended focus is seeking out the information, the communication that hasn't come to you. When you think about areas of your community or certain populations that don't have a strong voice or an advocate, or a parent or a family who might not be the ones that are going to show up to the public meeting and say something at public comment. Mr. Caldwell mentioned something earlier. When you get into a school and you engage the custodian, there's a reason that you do that, because the custodian might not have audience with the superintendent on a regular basis the way that a school principal does. And so that's creating a forum for that communication that says that it's welcome, that your input matters, that you don't just want to hear from people when they're upset, because usually that's when someone's willing to communicate with you. We joke and laugh a lot of times. It's like, when's the last time you were at dinner and you said, I want to speak to the manager? And you call the manager over and you're like, that was the best meal I've ever had, and thank you so much, and the service was great, and the food was cooked perfectly. That's not when we screen for the manager. We screen for the manager when things went sideways and the steak came out and it wasn't prepared the way that I wanted it, and the service, I couldn't find the waiter and couldn't get my water filled up. And so it's seeking out opportunities to make sure that all voices are heard, even if they're not the ones that show up in front of you on a regular basis.
We touched on it earlier, but would you take a minute and talk about the importance and role of motivation from the leader's perspective?
Motivation. I think motivation, and I keep harping on, that sounds like a broken record, but in my 32 years, motivation goes back to relationships. It goes back to trust. It goes back to enthusiasm. I believe enthusiasm has a lot to do with it. If you love what you're doing, it's contagious. And I think when you walk in and your group understands that this is the leader, but this leader truly cares about me. This leader truly cares about our organization. This leader listens to me. Then I think that leader is motivated. I mean, I think that organization is motivated. I think that to get it's hard to get motivation from someone that they don't respect you. And I think that I go back to let's just go back to the old coaching days. I mean, and go back to if you played athletics, or even if you played in the band, there's your directors, your best coaches. How do you best coaches motivate kids? You've got coaches and kids. You got kids that run through walls for coaches. How did that happen? What does one coach have over another coach that's truly a motivator? And I think you pull those athletes aside, and you're going to find out he cares about me. He cares about me, and I know if I got to run through that wall, he'll run through that wall with me. Or he even may run through that wall first and create a hole so I can run behind him. And so I think to motivate a staff, once again, to me, it goes back to those relationships that you have with your organization. And for those people to trust that leader and knowing that leader's with them, I think they'll be motivated.
I got taught a really wonderful lesson as an elementary principal by a kindergarten teacher who said, you know what you have to do is find every kid's currency and understand that it's not money. And I think in a lot of respects that applies to adults as well. You have to find what it is that drives them. And some people seek praise. Others seek challenge. Others seek team, and relational opportunities. Some seek independence. Some seek efficacy. And for a lot of us, that changes depending on what it is that we're dealing with, what it is that we're experiencing. It's not always just one note in that respect. And I think the gift of great leaders is recognizing the currency that serves the moment and the people and the need, at that particular time. If you walk into a classroom, whether it be an elementary or I think a collegiate level classroom or otherwise, and you see a really effective learning environment, I think you see educators that understand where their students are from a need to drive standpoint. And they recognize if I'm a continuing education learner at the university level, maybe I'm trying to further my career, I'm trying to create more opportunity or promotion. Maybe I'm a middle school and a high school student who's seeking opportunity for collegiate level scholarships and otherwise, or I'm an elementary school kid who just wants to feel like I'm a good reader and needs that kind of affirmation. And so motivation, I think, is critical to working through the difficult times, but also feeling rewarded for accomplishing anything. If I've been driven through that process, and so finding the things that drive individuals, I think, allow for the work that we do, whether it be in education or organization or otherwise, to be meaningful.
And I think that when you start looking at organizations, the old saying, of course, is you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with a group. Mm-hmm. And I think when you have this organization together and they're working together, I think that motivates people. I think that, let's be honest, and I'm just looking at myself personally, if I want to start running, I need some partners. I need some people to give me some encouragement. That's going to call me and say, okay, we're going to meet me at 5 o'clock and we're going to do 2 miles or whatever. Because if it was left up to myself, I think the old tennis shoes would probably never be put on. So it's always great to have a someone there with you, either behind you, beside you, pushing you, encouraging you, working with you for that same cause. And I think that motivates us much better than just working alone and by ourselves. You go much farther in a group. If you want to go fast, you can go by yourself. If you want to really go far, go with a group.
Mm-hmm. Great. How about decision making? Talk about the role and the importance of decision making as a leader.
Well, if it's a good decision, I made it. If it's a bad decision, Dr. Bryant made it. So let's go to the next
Right, yeah, exactly. And see.
No, I do think, and I go back to what Mr. Marlowe said about decision making. You've got to make them, and you've got to take all the data that you have, all the information that's with you, and make the best decision at that point in time that you feel is best. And like when he winked at me and said, like he said, the way to learn is to make good decisions, and how to do that is to make bad ones. And so, I mean, even the decisions we make at 3:30 in the morning, you know, when we're looking at the data, we're looking at forecasts, we're looking to say, is it going to snow, is it not going to snow? And you know, everything we're seeing, it's going to start snowing at 7:30 in the morning when we have 13,300 kids either in buses or in cars. We have to make a decision, and we're going to make it for the safety of the children. Do we get it right all the time? No. I mean, just last year, if you got to remember, we called a snow day, and I think it snowed for about 30 seconds. I went running outside, put my hands in the air, was so excited to see something. Somebody said, well, it didn't snow. No, it did. It was 30 seconds, but it snowed. But we have to make those decisions, and we have to feel good about it. And like I said, as we always go, we don't beat ourselves up. We just say we did the best we could do, and we're always going to err on the side of safety. But I think most all decisions are going to be like that. Some decisions are really going to be good. Some decisions a lot of people are not going to like, but you know it's what's best for the organization. Some people will understand the decision and not like it. There are just so many different outcomes of a decision that you make. But I think a leader, if he or she truly understands their organization, knows the group of people that they're working with, I think decisions are made easier because of the background and the information they have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're challenged by always saying, are we making the best decision possible with the information that's available? A lot of times that there's information that's not available, or we don't have the time that will allow us to investigate it for that period of time. It's almost a triage depending on the situation and the circumstance. You know, is this decision critical? Is it one that needs to be collectively decided? Is it one that's causal and it's going to have kind of rippling implications? And really working through the piece that says, have I thought through kind of what are the timing constraints of this particular decision? You know, what are the implications of that decision, and maybe who can I engage? And making sure that you put the charge on yourself, or the charge with the people that are around you, that ensure that what you might need to make that decision is present and accounted for. Again, there are plenty of times where we're going to look back and say, shoulda, woulda, coulda. But hopefully that's not, we should have, could have, would have gotten information that was readily available to us, or could have been considered, or could have been discussed, and we either ignored it or disregarded it or misinterpreted it. And I feel like that's that sort of critical underlayers for effective decision making for leaders and, you know, just people in general. Did I take that information? Did I process it correctly? Did I make sure that I understood it correctly? Did I make sure that it was presented to me correctly, as a way of working through that? And then again, recognizing that decision making is not about pleasing, because frequently decisions will adversely affect others. Mr. Caldwell gives that example of dealing with an inclement weather day. It's a little bit like being, you know, a football referee. Is every time you make a call, half the stadium thinks you're wrong every single time. And that you have to accept that and say, what are going to be the driving factors for our decision making? So if it's school safety, or it's student drivers, or if it's this, then we're going to allow that to be given more weight in the decision making process than maybe some other elements. And if you've properly vetted those influencing elements, I think you can sleep with a clear conscience and you know, on a soft pillow.
And as the true leader of the organization, once again, don't be fearful of making a decision, and listen to everyone around you. We have a little leadership team here, and every Monday morning we'll get together and we'll discuss issues, and as superintendent I'll listen. And the majority of the time, if a decision has to be made, I'll go around the room and I'll ask their opinions, and trust me, my 6 that I have, they'll quickly tell me their opinion. And they'll tell me what's on their heart, and that's the way I want it. I want to know what they're thinking on this decision that's going to affect our organization. Most of the time I go along with them. Most of the time I'll agree. But sometimes I joke around. I don't play the card much, but sometimes I have a superintendent's card. Sometimes as the leader, you have to go say, this is the decision I'm making. But also make sure that you have a team that after the end of that meeting, when they walk out, that decision, they might disagree in here, but when they walk out that door, all of them now believe in that decision and give people time. And I think that truly makes an organization. You may disagree, but all of a sudden when you hear one side and the decision is made, now you carry that torch, that now you believe in that decision. Because if that doesn't happen, you're going to see some issues with your organization.
On occasion, courageous leaders will say, we're always going to work together in shared decision making. I've heard this out of this man's mouth many times. Sometimes we're going to work together and make this decision together, and other times I'm going to make the decision and share it. And those are the way that it's gone. And just it is, I think, a really kind of a wink at what leaders are faced with. Is there are times to engage many voices, and there are other times to engage none, and to know the difference between the two, and know that will be kind of what drives the effectiveness of your leadership.
Let's talk about planning and the role that planning plays from the leader's perspective.
You've got to have a plan. I mean, if you're going on a trip, you're going on a vacation, whatever, you got to have a plan. You got to know where you're going, and let's kind of plan the day, and let's see what we want to do and how we want to get there. To me, the organization's the same way. If you don't have a plan, if you don't know what you're doing every day, and you don't know what your responsibilities are, I don't think you're ever going to get there. I think you're going to go back and you're going to find there could be time wasted. There could be the organization is not moving the way it could, is because you don't have this plan. As Dr. Bryant said, you got to have targets. Well, that's great to have a target, but you better have a plan on how you're going to hit the target. And you got to practice, and you've got to be able to look to see, let's try this, let's try that. Is that the best way to hit that target? And that's a plan. Because if it's not there, then you're just going to have people going in different directions. You all want to move in one direction, and that's your plan. And now you're tying it back to communication. You've got to share the plan. People've got to know the plan as well.
Got to have a plan. In education, you better have more than one. I was talking with a teacher after the first day of school at an extracurricular event, and I was asking her about the first day of school, and she was telling me about how well it went. And I said, well, tell me, so what are you guys going to tackle tomorrow? And she goes, well, depending on how it goes, I've got A, B, C, and D tomorrow. And I said, well, so that's 4 plans for 4 different classes? She said, no, that's 4 plans for 1 class. Because depending on how this particular lesson goes or this particular learning activity goes, I need to be prepared to go in different directions. And principal mentors of mine who are great leaders used to have E, F, G, H, I, because there are so many variables in the work that we do, whether they're the human variables or the resource variables or what takes place, on any given day, that certainly you've got to plan your work and work your plan. I mean, fundamental logic of being able to take some direction. And at the same time, recognize that a plan is nothing more than that. We even heard the county manager say to us not long ago that a plan is a lot like a car. It has a steering wheel, and it has an accelerator, it has a brake, because you may have to turn left, you may have to turn right, you might need to speed up on that plan, you might need to slow down. All of those things are true, but all can only be done if you know what it is that you're trying to accomplish and you know where it is that you're going. That you have to have articulated that early so that you can make good decisions throughout that process, and make sure that you've got an alternate route, because the road that you want to travel may not be the one that you get to stay on.
I like the analogy. From a personal standpoint, talk a little bit about time management and priority setting.
Oh, God.
Yeah, jeez. I'll let you go.
Next
Yeah,
question.
You got that one. Exactly.
I think time management for a leader is many times it's difficult. We want to give of ourselves so much to others that a lot of times we don't take enough time for ourselves. I think if I go back and look at my career, like I said, starting of year 36, I think there are many times that I don't want to say the word neglect, but there are many times that I miss some opportunities, maybe with my family or with some loved ones, that I was putting the organization first. And it's hard. And I'm not saying that what I did was wrong or and should change, but there's such a fine line many times on time management when what comes first. You know, I go to Stephen Covey, and if you go to a lot of his workshops, is I think for time management to me is once again you got to know your why. Or what are your big rocks? What are the things that are truly most important to you? Because if you start looking at a day, our day is eat up with, sitting right now, I pretty well emptied my email box, and probably when I get through with this, I'll probably have 65 emails, okay? With probably, I don't know how many telephone calls that are going to be on this man's board. I mean, we're eat up with phone calls, emails, just daily communications, things that have to get out there. Now, is that important? It is. Don't get me wrong. But yet a lot of times that eats our day up. And I call those many times little rocks on things that just eats us up. Well, where's our big rocks? What do we need to make sure? Because we need to make time that we schedule for our big rocks. And family is a big rock. And make sure that you've got time. If health, I mean, many times you can look at me, I'm not a specimen of a great physical guy. I'm trying to, and I need to get at it more and run and exercise more. That's got to start being a bigger rock of mine. I've got to be able to start finding time for that. And then fill in the other time with the emails and the phone calls. It's hard. It's discipline. It's difficult because a lot of times the little pebbles, the little rocks will get buried in. And we've got to be able to put those big rocks in our life first. Truly find out what's important and to schedule those things. And we've just started, I've told all of my parents, I want you to schedule time. You know, we even have a hard time many times of getting out to schools. I mean, here we are, we're a school system superintendent, but I'm sitting behind that desk more than really where I need to be. I need to be in schools because that's where it's happening. Mm-hmm. Well, we've started making that a big rock, and we just started scheduling time to get out into the schools to talk with teachers more, to talk, once again, the organization. It's time management is difficult, but I think the thing that I just keep going back to is you just got to set your priorities, and you've got to make sure you stick with those priorities.
Yeah, sadly, I think a lot of leaders would say what I know I'm guilty of, and it's a very much do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. You know, balance the time, find the work-life balance, or manage your time well. And just as Mr. Caldwell was saying, so much of it is being reflective about, are you spending your time on the things that are most important? You know, if you coded your day, the amount of time you spend on an email or in a meeting, or is that what you should be doing? Are those the most important elements of it? And when those things are out of balance, I think we have the challenge of trying to put them in balance. And I think in the most effective places, it is something we all have to model. You know, we have a responsibility to not say, let's manage our time and spend it on the big rocks and don't worry about the little rocks. Make sure that, but to show it, to demonstrate that, you know, you're going to do that. And I think that is reflected through time, because it quite simply is, and I've shared this in many respects, like it is the most precious resource we have because it's the only thing we can't make more of. Like you cannot make more time. Everybody says, I don't have time for that, I don't have time for that. We all have the same. Everybody has 24 hours every day. And the way you choose it is how you communicate to people what's important to you. And so if you're a school leader and you're in classrooms and you're interacting with students and you're interacting with teachers, you are communicating to them what's important to you. If you spend 2 hours on your email every day, you are communicating what's important to you, directly or indirectly. That happens. And so that kind of twin-headed monster is, if we believe the work-life balance is important, and we believe that we want that to exist for our employees, or we want to model it for our students or our community, it has to be demonstrated by the leadership. You can't say, hey, I want you to spend more time with your family, and family is important, but I'm going to spend 90 hours a week behind my desk. Like, that is, you know, we might as well just put the hypocrisy sign on our chest and walk around with it. And so you cannot have an expectation, I believe, for others that you don't have for yourself. And from a leadership standpoint, it requires this constant push on each other that says, if we value these important things, or if we value balance in your life and time with family, then we have to demonstrate and reflect that for other people.
There's more study and talk now on different styles of leadership. And would you talk for a minute about how you view that, the different styles or the styles that you've been drawn to or use, or different models of leadership, if you will? Talk about that and how it is, if it is important to you.
Yeah. When I was studying my doctoral work, I was fascinated by kind of the case study and even the theoretical frameworks for various leadership styles. And ultimately, because it felt a lot like knowing what tool to pick when you were building a home. You know, the leadership styles often are opportunities to choose the tool you need based on what's going on in that particular moment. You know, maybe you need transformational leadership in this moment. Maybe you don't. Like, you have to recognize kind of what the lay of the land is in the environment. But also making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that don't think and work and operate the way that you do. You know, so that you have a really refined spectrum of leadership styles, because each style is going to appeal and serve others in different ways. You know, John Maxwell writes the whole leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So you need people and styles that can influence the whole gamut of you know, who you're serving. And so this, I think the stylistic piece is recognizing that even as simple as Mr. Caldwell and myself, very, very different leaders, but an absolute same objective. And so we will come at things from very different ways, but find ways to serve and support each other, because now we've got it surrounded, rather than all coming at it from the same direction. It maybe makes our teams more effective because there's some diversity in that.
And I think when one starts reading about all the different styles that are out there, and I think that you've got to be careful to all of a sudden say, well, I'm going to be this one. This is my style. I like what I read. Well, I think a lot of it, to me, also deals with your personality and deals with what's inside of you is more of a style. So I don't think it'd be hard for me to say one can just go pick one and that's the style that I want to be. I think it's got to match up with who you are and your personality. And I think all of them are successful, and I think once again you can read about the different styles in your personality. I'm a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We just did help me out here, Dr. Wright. We did a leadership with our different styles.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like it kind of an
Gallup
inventory, much like a Myers-Briggs.
Yes, Myers-Briggs type of thing. And my style was different, like you said, than Dr. Price. But I think when I started reading the characteristics of leadership that was described to me, it pretty well matched up to my personality. So I think when one starts studying the different styles that are out there, I think that one needs to read it and reflect on, okay, I like this, and I can take this and use this, because this is who I am. Because you've got to feel good about yourself. You've got to feel good about who you are before you can certainly start sharing and leading others.
Yeah, and I think that effectiveness piece, that fit part, something we talk a lot about. You know, when we hire principals, we're making determinations around who that individual is, what those standard kind of leadership dispositions are, and how they're going to fit that school community. Because each of our 23 school communities are very different. They each need different things at different times. You know, the leader that's going to be right for a particular elementary school in 2020 might be very different than the type of leader you need in 2025 when that job is open again. And you have to give careful consideration, or at least we do, because we found that the most effective school communities have the right leader at the right time. You know, you can't put somebody in there that says, you know, here's how I work, and that's not what the environment needs at that time. You always learn those hard lessons and sort of go, you know, that's just not the right marriage. And whether it be a school or an organization, I think the leadership disposition needs to match the needs of where that school or that organization is at the time.
Coming through. There's a lot being learned and said about the mindset of the athlete. And we're seeing a lot of that, the mindset of the entrepreneur. Talk a little bit about the mindset of the leader, and then also this idea was mentioned earlier, work-life balance for a leader.
Yeah. The mindset has to be a willingness to grow, be coachable. I say that through the lens of sometimes the word leader has the connotation of like a finished product, like congratulations, you are now a leader by title or job or otherwise. The cake is done, kind of thing. Go off and be effective. And leaders have to be, just people who are committed to constant growth, to say that we want to be better, we want to improve, and that coachability says that I'm open to input from people who might be able to kind of grow me and influence me, in a positive way. If anything, that's kind of one of the core characteristics of really effective and lasting leaders. You don't want to be the firework. Oftentimes, somebody might come in and be, you can have that real bright first pop and then, the fizzle. But if you want to be kind of that rocket that says, I'm going to kind of stay on that course trajectory and continue on that line, that high arc of success, there's a willingness to continue to grow and an openness to continue to improve. It was our last superintendent that used to say to us all the time, as soon as you think you've got it figured out, I need you to quit. Like the minute you kind of get to that place, then we're in trouble. That you feel like you've accomplished that. And there just kind of, I think, has to be a hunger for that piece of it.
There is. I think that the one more piece you need to add to that for a mindset is enjoy what you're doing. We've talked about time. We've talked about time management. We've talked about basically, to be honest with you, life is life.
I'm very grateful for that.
No problem.
Absolutely.
All right.
Real
Succession
quick,
plan.
I'm sorry, this says card full. I don't know if that's significant. Thought I might look down while
Just
you.
taking a look, yeah, I appreciate that, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
So when you going to do this with Dr. Leatherwood as well?
I asked her. She said she would be glad to do it. How much time would it take? When I told her, she said maybe next round.
Oh, okay.
Not right now.
Okay.
She
Should
did.
be a good one.
She did recommend you guys.
Oh, did she? Oh.
Let's put a body on this for this one here.
Sure.
You can blame
Fine.
her.
We can blame
Exactly. I appreciate note to self on that one. I
Yeah.
appreciate you telling me that.
She's threw the names out. Okay, here we go. We're going to work off of that.
Sure.
Succession.
I think a great organization, and I feel so fortunate here that we do have leaders within our organization. When you think of a leader, a lot of times you think of just one person. We have teacher leaders. I work with a group of teachers, superintendent teacher advisory council. That's teacher leaders coming up here and talking about the leadership that they can work in their own schools. We have a class, Dr. Bryant works and Dr. King through their great work with teachers who were thinking about getting into administration. So we're going ahead and starting to work with those. We meet with our assistant principals, working with them on professional development and deal with their growth to basically, hopefully, they'll become principals one day. And here, as superintendent, is my goal for my leadership team to work with them. Because to be honest with you, 36 years, I don't know how many more years I have in this business. But I'd love for one of those that's sitting around that table just to take it over, just because it's they know what's happening in education, and more importantly, they know Henderson County. And so I think it's great for an organization to have leadership work within that organization. And to work with even our children right now with Leader in Me. What a great way. We're developing leaders in kindergarten age. I walked into a classroom and was greeted at the door, and the kindergartners stuck their hand out and welcome to Fletcher Elementary School. How great is that? How great is that of teaching our even our just kindergartners about leadership? But I think it's so important for an organization to work with people within that organization to be able to, when positions come available, to promote from within, to move them up because they understand the organization.
The Assistant Superintendent for Instructional Services and myself did some research at one point where Fortune 500 companies have deliberate and direct programs by which you identify people within your own organization and even outside your organization who you believe have the potential or competencies and skill sets to do the work you're currently doing. To identify those people and begin mentoring and bringing them along in order that there might be a readiness and a pipeline. That sort of evolved to exactly what you heard Mr. Caldwell say, this aspiring administrator program that we developed within our own school system so that you can begin to cultivate readiness for whatever those future jobs are. And that can feel a little weird initially in an organization to sort of reflect on what your current job is and then sort of say, who can I bring along? But that is the goal. That rather than seeing it as a threat to the work that you're doing or otherwise, saying like the long-term health of the organization depends on someone that the day I leave, the day he leaves, the day the group that currently sits around this leadership table leaves, because that will happen at some point for any number of reasons. You want to understand what's needed in order to continue the work that's been done and to lead it forward, but also to know that there's been very concerted and deliberate effort to grow those folks. And again, I think that succession planning is one of those things that leaders can't hope just happens. We joke all the time, like hope is not a strategy. Like that is not a plan. You know what I mean? That's just a disposition. So you have to be thoughtful and purposeful and identify people because there is an awesome opportunity that usually comes from telling someone you believe in their potential to do something greater than they've already done. You talked about motivation earlier today. Like what pulls you along is somebody who looks you in the eye and says, you know what? I believe you can do more than you're doing right now. And I'm not going to just tell you I believe in you. I'm going to invest in you. I'm going to invest energy and time and resources and training or otherwise mentorship so that you have a readiness for when opportunity like that presents itself, whether it be within your own system or elsewhere, so that you have success. I mean, succession is all about making sure that there are successful transitions among the positions of leadership and influence in your organization.
And every organization needs growth. You've got to work with as far as professional development, you have to work with your group and grow. I mean, I hear all the time, if you're not growing, you're dying. And so therefore, we want all of our staff to continue, I think, through the Dr. King and her work. Just we had 2 days of intense workshops and development for our teachers to grow in their skills as teaching. And you've got to be able to provide those opportunities for your staff to help them grow. Because once again, if everyone in the organization is not growing, your organization is not going to go anywhere. So we truly work hard to grow every person that we possibly can in our organization because growth is so important.
Gentlemen, it's been awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
I hope we.
Hopefully you've got about 30 seconds of stuff you can use.
Yeah, that's exactly. And trust me, when you start going it, if I hit the floor and he stays in the reel, that's okay with me. That's what I tell WLS all the time. I said, look, you get over there and you start going through it. If I get cut and hit the floor, that's all right.
Why do you think I like this?